Hello, friends. Welcome to Sail Happy Home. I'm happy to be here with you today on this Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026. I recently got married this year. I married my soulmate this year, and I have a gorgeous set of wedding rings, a teardrop alexandrite surrounded by diamonds, and it nestles itself into a delicate wedding band with a diamond on it, and it comes to a teardrop. It's real fragile looking, beautiful but fragile. So I went out and I got a silicone ring. It's the same thing, uh, the teardrop shape that goes into the band. It's a simple, silicone thing. But because my rings are, I'm rough on my hands. I take care of the birds and the wildlife outside and dragging garbage around and cooking and cleaning. And I'm always having to take my rings off, and I'm always concerned about them getting wrecked or, damaged or something. So I really only wear them when we go to family events or, special occasions or days that I'm not going to be doing a lot in the kitchen. And I thought, well, I like being married. I like having a ring on my hand, but I can't wear it. I don't want to wreck it, you know? So I know women often have decoy rings, which are like, cubic zirconias that look like their wedding rings that they wear when they go out or whatever. So if they get robbed, they don't get the real thing, or if it gets broken, they like to feel that way. But I got this silicone one here to start to see how I like it. It might be something to look into. Some of them are pretty spendy and they're beautiful. Some of them are actually quite beautiful. And they contain stones, they have designs and different things. So it's a way to, have that, represent your marriage and be able to enjoy saying, hey, look, I'm married, without having to, have to put your ring into peril. Because, those things are friggin' expensive. But that's not what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you today about conspiracy theories, particularly the Wuhan market. I want to talk to you about that today. There's a show on Discovery right now. It's a limited series. It's called Conspiracies and Cover-Ups. And it's a guy who claims to be an ex-CIA agent, and he's going through different infamous conspiracies. And if you are a conspiracy nut like I am, it might be worth a watch. However, I will let you know that if you are a conspiracy theorist and you do not like people debunking your conspiracy theories, getting to the truth, the science, and what really happened, you may not be happy watching the show. Because I know that there are a lot of conspiracy theorists out there that love their conspiracies and they want those conspiracies to be true. And if you are open to understanding that they may just be that, a conspiracy, and not based in fact, you might be open to the show. If you don't want people debunking your conspiracies, I wouldn't recommend it. It's on Discovery Channel, and however you get Discovery Channel, I get mine through Amazon. However you get your Discovery Channel, it's worth watching. But what I want to talk to you about is the episode we watched last night was about COVID, the COVID conspiracies, the cover-ups, and they touched on the Wuhan wet market. Now, here in America, we live a very different life. We live in a very different world than China, even China in 2026. Now, when I see films or photos or whatever of this wet market, all I can think of is these friggin' savages. They're skinning dogs, cats, raccoons alive. They're eating snakes, eels, bats, monkeys, things that we consider family and companion. It's beyond us to do something like that. And because of my intense love for animals and the earth, and my belief that humans are here to care for and cater to the earth and to protect Earth's creatures, animals, humans. Now, the history of the Wuhan wet market began back, there were actually in the 20th century, I think in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and then again in the 50s into the 60s, there was a massive just extinction level famine that took place in southern China. Well over 40 million people died of starvation in the mid 20th century in southern China. And because necessity is the mother of invention, and we understand that if it's kill or be killed, starve or eat that animal to stay alive, we're going to make concessions, okay? And through the years, people have had to eat their horses and their dogs and dairy cattle and, different things. They eat guinea pigs in Peru, I think it is. So I get that we live a very different lifestyle here in America, and we have a very different brain chemistry when it comes to the approach to animals, wildlife, domestic, both alike. And during that time, they had to come up with ways to prevent the extinction of their race, their humanity. So at that time, having to eat things like raccoons, dogs, cats, whatever, it was necessary. But moving out of the mid 20th century into the late 20th century, into the 21st century, with manufacturing, technology, science, the basic knowledge of food and how to get food, where to get food. Now you can have things delivered, you can have things created in a lab. There are too many options now, and I'm finding it really hard to accept that they're still running these wet markets right now, today, this very moment, with dogs, cats, raccoons, snakes, God knows what else, bats, in cages, and they're skinning them alive. And I'm not shitting you. They skin the animal alive and then hang it to advertise it. I don't believe that this is really necessary in today's day and age. Now, people can argue tradition, culture. That's great. We all have rich cultures. We all have rich traditions. But traditions and cultures are also made to evolve. When something we do culturally is no longer beneficial to that culture, when that tradition becomes reckless, it changes. When children are born and raised, they're raised in the culture and traditions of their parents. But then as they grow up into adulthood and go out on their own, they start to create their own habits, their own traditions, and incorporate them into their families. So, given all that we have access to today, given how traditions and cultures can evolve to be better, because if a culture is detrimental to humanity, if its behavior is abhorrent, it gets changed, it gets stopped. The Nazi movement, imprisoning, torturing, and burning Jewish people, was really counterproductive. It was really bad. And the world went to war to stop that cultural movement. Right now, we're in a battle, cultural battle, Western versus developing, with Islamic nations that think it's okay to marry 9-year-old girls and stone women to death and hang their athletes in the street. We know that's counterproductive to the survival of humanity, and we know it's abhorrent and torturous behavior. And so there's this battle now, to cultural battles and traditions. And that's why ending the Iran war is so almost impossible, because we're fighting against hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of culture and tradition that are no longer conducive to 21st century life here on our planet. So the Wuhan markets, I don't see a need or a purpose anymore I see a need and a purpose for organizations and humanitarian agencies to go in and show the people in these areas other options to survive. Show them the incredible blessing and benefit dogs, cats, raccoons, birds, bats are to not just your environment, but to your personal human well-being. And that outweighs eating them at this point in time. Now, I'm not judging people. The Donner Party, people make jokes about the Donner Party all the time, that they had to resort to cannibalism. We know that there are historic accounts of individuals and groups of people who, to sustain their life, had to resort to cannibalism or suspected they resorted to cannibalism. And I understand that you have to do what you need to do to survive, because our survival instinct, that God spark within us that tells us we must do everything to survive, we must fight to be here as long as we can, that's going to outweigh for pretty much 99.99.9% of the population over the survival of a rabbit, a raccoon, or whatever. Also, I would love to see someone go in and actually educate them on the dangers of handling bats, raccoons, animals that are natural carriers of rabies, fleas, ticks, other bloodborne diseases, saliva transferred diseases. I think that I just get the sense from this episode that I watched on conspiracies and cover-ups about COVID-19. My gut really said that they're doing it because it's convenient, because it's just lazy habit. And I think that it's no longer needed. And I'm trying really hard not to call an entire nation of people savages, but when I see what they're doing, for me personally, it shook me to my core. And I guess if I was in a kill or be killed situation with a bear, a wolf, whatever, I would fight to the end. And if it was a kill or be killed, okay, it's a kill or be killed. I get it. Be the same thing with a human. If a human was attacking me, I would do everything I could to save myself, because it's human nature. You don't stand there and take it. But you don't go out deliberately looking to beat a bear half to death or gun down a wolf just because you're human and you have a gun and you can. That's why they control populations of predatory animals in areas such as, national parks and the vast cattle ranches of the West and et cetera, because, if a pack of wolves got into your ranch, you'd be screwed. So I get that there are reasonable expectations of population control and populations of wolves in particular throughout the U.S. that have been removed from certain areas so that those areas can thrive and then reintroduce. I believe Yellowstone, Yosemite, one of the two, has recently done that in the past 5 years or so. They just recently introduced. So I get that, because we are encroaching on Earth and whatnot, we need to be sensible and reasonable about it. But I think that what's going on with these wet markets in Wuhan, China, and everywhere else in China right now is absolutely unnecessary. Now, I may be 1,000% wrong, and I welcome you to give me the information that would tell me that. I have no problem in being wrong. I just know that from what I understand about these wet markets, they don't seem to be needed anymore. I think it's just out of laziness or convenience when there are so many other options now. And the government of China should be intervening and putting a stop to it as well. It's just simply a cultural, traditional thing that was born out of a life and death need to survive. But they're no longer at that point in their lives. They're a thriving nation, and I don't think it's needed. And I wish that there was some way to put a stop to them, because we here in America, we don't do that anymore because we know better. We have other options, and we try very hard not to do horrible things like slaughter companion animals for meat. Heck, even when they found out that horse meat was being used for dog food in the 20th century, that caused such an outrage that was taken away too. I mean, we don't even want to feed companion animals to companion animals. And I just think that there's a better option. I don't think that it's needed anymore. And I think that what's happening there every moment of every day, those animals suffering and struggling and being tortured, knowing what we know, they simply don't care, or it's just out of convenience. But it's no longer out of necessity. I don't believe that for a second. So tell me what you think. Maybe catch that episode. Watch it. It's called Conspiracies and Cover-Ups on the Discovery Channel. And there's one episode in there. Well, all the episodes are fantastic. They do one on the New Jersey drones. They do one on Timothy Crooks and the Butler assassination attempt, on Trump, mind control. I mean, there's really fantastic episodes, very well done. And I think it's a series worth checking out if you love conspiracy theories, but not if you are not comfortable with those conspiracies being debunked, because they do give a lot of fact, a lot of science. They talk to a lot of people that have never before had a voice about these things. And if you want your conspiracies to live, they're more than likely gonna not live. They're gonna die there on that show. So just be forewarned. I know Douglas, my Douglas, he loves a good conspiracy, and he doesn't like it when his conspiracies are questioned. And that's fine. That's fine. It's okay to have a conspiracy and to love it. I believe in dead people. So, there you go. So yeah, check it out. It's been so far a really interesting series. And I learned a lot that I didn't know about the Wuhan wet markets. And now I'm even more horrified than I was before. And I think that there are many humanitarian efforts that could be led in southern China to put a stop to those markets, or at least limit them to things like seafood. But yeah, no, that ain't happening. I ain't eating a cobra, or a little rhesus monkey. I'm sorry. If it's rhesus, it better be chocolate and peanut butter and not a furry little creature with a long tail. And until next time, do good and be good.